Okay, Madam Chair, this is Teresa. We are ready to begin the meeting when you are.
Great, thank you, ma'am. I'll call to order the Monday, September 27 regular meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals for the town of Hilton Head Island. Ms. Haley, are we in compliance with FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act?
Yes, ma'am, we are.
Thank you, ma'am. And would you please call the roll?
Certainly. Mr. Christian?
Here.
Mr. Walczak?
Present.
Ms. Loudermilk?
Present.
Dr. Ponder?
Present.
Mr. Fingerhut?
Present.
Ms. Bryson?
Present.
And Mr. Johnson is expected.
Okay, we will go ahead and proceed. As we usually note, hopefully he will be here before we begin a public hearing on a matter. If not, he wouldn't be able to participate in the matter. So hopefully he can join us soon.
Yes, ma'am.
So with that, I'd welcome all to this board meeting and welcome the members of the public thanks to members of town council. I see are also following along with our meeting, and also welcome to the town staff and to the applicants. The procedure today, primarily we have one variance to consider. And in considering variances, primarily this being a quasi-judicial board, our job is to conduct a fair and impartial hearing for applicants and the staff. In order to do that, we apply procedural and substantive due process. And we follow the requirements of the Land Management Ordinance and the Board of Zoning Appeals Rules of Procedure. Again, today we are going to be considering a variance, and the substantive law is found in the Land Management Ordinance in subsection 16-2-103S. The rules of procedure, which will follow for variances, are found in Article 7 of our rules of procedure. And the procedure that we will follow is the following. First of all, staff will have a maximum of 20 minutes to present the facts and applicable legal principles that the staff believes support the position of staff with respect to the application for a variance. During the presentation by staff, members of the Board of Zoning Appeals may ask such questions as they deem appropriate. At the discretion of the chair, staff's time may be extended if the staff is unable to complete the presentation due to questioning from the Board of Zoning Appeals. The applicant then has a maximum of 20 minutes to present the facts and applicable legal principles that the applicant believes supports the application for a variance. During the presentation by the applicant, members of the Board of Zoning Appeals may ask such questions as they deem appropriate. At the discretion of the chair, the applicant's time may be extended if the applicant is unable to complete the presentation due to questioning from the Board of Appeals. After that, the staff and the applicant have 5 minutes to present any desired rebuttal. Following the presentation, the board may ask such additional questions of the applicant or staff as the board deems appropriate. There will be a public comment time period for variances, and at that time I will ask Ms. Haley, our secretary, if there are any public comments. That will be the procedure that we will follow for the variance hearing today. The next item on our agenda is approval of the agenda. And one quick note, as our published agenda says, one of the variance applications has been withdrawn. That is the application for 161 Dillon Road for removal of an oak tree and a variance from the LMO section regarding specimen and significant tree preservation standards. And that, as noted on the agenda, has been withdrawn. Does staff have any changes to the agenda?
This is Missy Lewick. No, we do not have any changes. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any changes from board members? If
Move
not,
acceptance, Madam Chairperson, as amended.
thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Loudermilk. And Ms. Haley, will you call the roll on the motion to approve the agenda?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Christian?
For the motion.
Mr. Walczak?
For the motion.
Ms. Loudermilk,
For the motion.
Dr. Ponder,
For the motion.
Mr. Fingerhut,
David, you're on mute.
For the motion.
thank you.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Bryson.
For the motion.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of July 26, 2021. We did not have an August meeting. Any changes to the minutes from board members? If not, may I have a motion to approve the minutes of July 26, 2021?
So moved.
Moved by
Second.
Mr. Fingerhut, second by Mr. Walczak. Any
Yes.
discussion on the motion? Not, Ms. Haley, will you call the roll on the motion?
Certainly, Madam Chair. Mr. Christian,
For the motion.
Mr. Walczak,
For the motion.
Ms. Loudermilk,
For the motion.
Dr. Ponder,
For the motion.
Mr. Fingerhut,
For the motion.
Ms. Bryson.
For the motion.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Haley, at this time on our agenda is appearance by citizens. Do we have any request of citizens to appear today?
Madam Chair, we do not have any appearance by citizens at this time, as there were no requests to give comments by phone. Public comments also could be submitted electronically via the town's open town hall portal. The portal closed at 1:30 today, and there were no comments of record. I will note that staff received written comments concerning the variance application for 14 Ibis Street, and those were provided to the board for review. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, ma'am. Next item on the agenda is unfinished business, and the chair is not aware of any unfinished business. That brings us to new business, and the first item under new business is a public hearing on variance request 001411-2021. At this time, I will open the public hearing on that variance request. It is a request from Brian Rose of Rose Landscape LLC on behalf of Monica Duvall for a variance from LMO subsection 16-5-113, fence and wall standards, 16-5-102, setback standards, and 16-5-103 buffer standards to allow a proposed fence to exceed the maximum fence height of 7 feet on or along a common property line. The property address is 14 Ibis Street with a parcel number of R550-015-00A-0301 quadruple 0. And now I'll call upon the staff, Ms. Lewick, to make a presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to get my presentation open. My name is Missy Lewick. I'm a senior planner for the record. And yes, this is a presentation on the variance requested at 14 Ibis Street. As already stated, the request is a variance request from the fence and wall standards, setback standards, and buffer standards to allow a proposed fence to exceed the maximum fence height of 7 feet on or along a common property line. The subject property is located on the corner of North Forest Beach Drive and Ibis Street in the Forest Beach Neighborhood Character Overlay District, as seen outlined in blue on the screen in front of you. The following are a couple of pictures of the subject property. Here you can see the 4-foot tall section of fence located on the North Forest Beach side of the property. Here's that view again. There's a grassy area in between North Forest Beach and the 4-foot tall section of fence. You can see in the distance a portion of the 6-foot tall fence, as well as the taller poles where the 12-foot tall fence is proposed. Here you can see the section more clearly where the 12-foot taller fence is proposed, and that is located between the 14 Ibis Street property and the adjacent property, which is addressed at 42 North Forest Beach Drive. Here is the site plan that was included in your application materials. The applicant is proposing a 4-foot tall section of fence within the North Forest Beach Drive adjacent street setback, which is allowed per the LMO. The applicant is also proposing an 18-foot section of 6-foot tall fence along the common property line between 14 Ibis and 42 Forest Beach Drive, which is also allowed. But finally, the applicant is proposing a 40-foot section of 12-foot tall fence along the common property line between 14 Ibis Street and 42 Forest Beach Drive, which is the subject of this variance request and is not allowed by the LMO. So the 4-foot tall and 6-foot tall sections of fence do not require the variance, but the 12-foot section of fence that's 40-foot long is the subject of this variance request. And I color-coded those sections on this next slide, as I realized it was hard to see on the slide as well. So the green portion that you can see here is the 4-foot tall section. The yellow is the 6-foot tall section of fence, and the red area is where the fence is proposed to be 12 feet in height. And again, the green and yellow sections are not subject to the variance request, but only the red section that we're talking about, which would be exceeding the 7-foot height limit on a common property line, as they're proposing 12 feet in that section. And I will add that for fences that are 7 feet in height or less, the town doesn't require a building permit. For fences taller than that, then the town would require a building permit. All development proposed in the Forest Beach Overlay District, Forest Beach Association does review and offer approval of those development improvements within their jurisdiction. Per the LMO, section 16.5.113, fences up to 7 feet in height are allowed on or along common property lines. Variances from the setback and buffer standards are also requested in this case because the allowable setback encroachments, as well as the buffer types table, refer to a fence being allowed on and along a common property line no more than 7 feet in height. So while this request does not encroach in a setback or buffer, as it's on the common property line, it includes a variance from those sections as they both refer to the height limit of 7 feet in height. So the purpose and intent here is that the fence and wall standards section is to establish minimum standards to regulate the location, height, and appearance of fences and walls to maintain visual harmony within the neighborhoods and zoning districts throughout the town, protect against adjacent properties from the indiscriminate placement and unsightliness of fences and walls, and to ensure the safety, security, and privacy of properties. So again, here's another image of the property as well as the location of the requested variance here. And to reiterate that the applicant is seeking a variance for just a 40-foot section of fence along a common property line to exceed the 7-foot height requirement. So they're looking at seeking an additional 5 feet of fence height, or 12 feet tall in total, for that 40-foot section to mitigate, according to the applicant, the visual impact of the adjacent 3-story residence adjacent to their property. It was noted during the review of this application submittal and would be handled as a separate matter that the site plan submitted for the variance does show a replacement of an existing concrete walkway with rock or paver walkways that are in the buffer. The concrete walkways within the side and rear buffers are existing non-conforming site features, and a non-conforming site feature waiver approval would be required to make changes to these site features. And so we will advise the applicant to work with town staff to seek a waiver approval for those proposed site improvements that were included on the site plan that was submitted for the variance. Variance criteria number 1, there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property. The town found that the subject property is approximately 0.18 acres in size. The subject property is approximately the same size as the other properties in the same block and generally similar in size to other properties within Forest Beach. The subject property is rectangular in shape, as are the majority of the other adjacent properties. The property, as well as other properties in the RS5 district, have a 35-foot maximum building height, and the property is currently developed as a one-story single-family home. The property does not contain any unique site features that prohibit development on the lot. And so staff concludes that this application does not meet criteria 1 and that there are no extraordinary and exceptional conditions that pertain to the property. Criteria number 2, these conditions do not generally apply to other properties in the vicinity. Staff found that the majority of the lots located between Heron Street, Dune Lane, Jacana, and Forest Beach Drive are rectangular in shape and are approximately 0.18 acres in size. There are 1, 2, and 3-story homes throughout the Forest Beach neighborhood, and the fence and wall standards apply to all properties that are within that vicinity. So staff concludes that this application does not meet criteria 2 because there are no extraordinary and exceptional conditions that pertain to this particular property that don't also apply to other properties within the vicinity. Criteria number 3, because of these conditions, the application of this ordinance to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. Staff found that the property is currently developed with a single-family residence. LMO section 16.5.113 states that fences up to 7 feet in height are allowed on or along common property lines, and that the purpose and intent of the fence and wall standards is to establish minimum standards to regulate the location, height, and appearance of fences and walls to maintain visual harmony. It was concluded that the application does not meet criteria number 3 because there are no extraordinary or exceptional conditions that pertain to this property that unreasonably prohibit the use of the property, as the property is already developed with a single-family residence and a fence is allowed on the property up to 7 feet in height on or along the common property line. Criteria number 4, the authorization of the variance will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property or the public good, and the character of the zoning district where the property is located will not be harmed by the granting of a variance. Staff found that the purpose, again, of the fence and wall standards is to establish minimum standards to regulate, again, the location, light, height, and appearance of fences to maintain visual harmony. We found that the application does not meet criteria 4 because the 12-foot tall fence is out of character with the rest of the neighborhood. Therefore, based on the findings of fact and conclusions of law contained in this staff report, it is staff's recommendation that the BZA deny the application as all 4 of the criteria have not been met. At this time, this concludes my presentation. If there are any questions from the board, I can take those at this time.
And as usual, especially during virtual meetings, we'll go through a rotation of board members asking questions. Again, if you have no questions or you want to defer, please feel free to do so. So this time in order, Mr. Fingerhut, your name comes up first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have no questions.
Okay. Mr. Johnson, has Mr. Johnson joined us?
Madam Chair, Mr. Johnson is not on the line.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. And for the record, we'll note that if he does come to the meeting during this public hearing, that he would not be able to consider this variance as the rules require him to be here at the beginning of this. Dr. Ponder, your name comes up next in the order.
No question at this time.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Loudermilk, any questions from you?
I have no questions either.
All right. Mr. Walczak, any questions from you?
No questions. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. Mr. Christian, any questions from you?
Yeah, I have 2. Missy, is it my understanding that this particular item was not given to the ARB of the local association? Did I read that somewhere in your report?
The Forest Beach Association sent in a public comment, and yes, they indicated that a fence had not gone through their review and approval process. That's correct.
Okay, second question. There are existing 4x4s that exceed the height of the fence in that area that we're considering a variance. Are those a violation in and of themselves, just the posts standing up? Are they a violation of our LMO?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if Nicole can answer that. I believe that they are in violation of our fence height, but I don't know if a post itself is considered a fence or a wall.
That's where I'm going, Missy, are those posts legal the way they're standing?
Let me look in the LMO real quick. I think that there's an allowance for the post associated with the fence. Hold on 1 minute.
And for those who are attending the meeting virtually, that's Nicole Dixon, who is a member of the town staff.
So the gates, posts, and columns associated with that's for entry gates. Yeah, so so an entry gate, the columns are allowed to go up to 6 feet in height, but any other part of the fence can not exceed the height limit.
Okay, so the posts are presently in violation.
Correct.
Okay, thank you, Nicole.
Yep.
That's all I have, Madam Chairperson.
Thank you, sir. So that comes to the chair with questions. Ms. Lewick, as I understand it, there's an existing fence on the property along Forest Beach Drive. So the new fence proposed along Forest Beach Drive, is that to replace the existing one? And will it come into the grassy area between the pavement of Forest Lake Drive and the house?
No, what's there is what was shown on the plan. That's the 4-foot tall section.
Okay, all right, thank you. And the same question would apply for the fence along the common property line where the variance is being requested. There's an existing fence. Is what's shown on the plan? So there won't be any change to that fence except for this section being requested?
That's correct. The section, there is not the current tall section that's being requested, but the other shorter sections of fence are already in place.
Okay, all right. And you mentioned a walkway and perhaps a waiver applying. Has that been approved yet?
No.
Okay. And does that walkway also have to go before the ARB of the Forest Beach Owners Association?
From what I understand, all development goes in front of them. So yes, that would have to be reviewed by Forest Beach as well.
Okay. And just a question about the procedure. Whenever there is a requirement by a local association to review and consider an application, why does that not come before that association before it comes to the board for a variance? And if that's not a question for you, if our staff attorney, Ms. Bush, who yes, I see her name in the list, would be available to address that question. Ms. Bush, can you address that question of why it comes to us when it has not yet gone before the ARB of a local owners association?
Chair Bryson, I do not know the answer to that question. I think normally it would with the other associations that I'm familiar with. This association, I'm not sure of its organization, and it's the first time I've seen it. So I'm hoping maybe Nicole or Missy would know the answer to that.
Ms. Dixon or Ms. Lewick, do you know the answer to that question?
I know that the town would not approve a permit. Sorry, this is Nicole Dixon speaking. I know that the town would not approve a permit until we have the POA approval in place. I don't know that we've ever not moved forward with a variance application until we had the POA approval in place. I think sometimes the POA would inform the applicant that they won't approve it until they get a variance from the town. I think I've seen that in the past.
And did any of you know, I'm sorry, Mr. Christian.
Yeah,
Okay.
Madam Chairperson, I'm of a like mind where I think you are going. It's been my experience that usually the town will wait to get the ARB approval before moving forward with the variance request. So we're not at odds with the local homeowners association when considering, such requests, because it will put them in a difficult position if we offer a variance and then the ARB of the local association finds it not aesthetically in line with their architectural standards.
Yes, thank you, sir. And I was going to ask a follow-up question, and that is, and it sounds as though the staff doesn't know the answer to this, but is there any requirement in either the LMO, the state statute, or the board's rules or procedures which require us to proceed with a variance application within a certain time period, notwithstanding consideration by an owners association?
Madam Chair,
The answer to that.
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, who is speaking now? If you could identify yourself.
Sorry, this is Nicole. I was just going to say I do not know the answer to that. And like I said, I've heard from different POAs that they've got their rules that they enforce, and that they would not approve something that would be contrary to the town's LMO unless they received a variance from the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Okay, I think we need to know the answer to that question. And I guess the board will decide how to proceed after we've heard the applicant, unless there are other questions of staff members by any board members. I see heads going like no, so I'm going to go ahead and ask the applicant to make their presentation. Again, a maximum of 20 minutes, subject to time period if board members are asking questions and interrupting. And I should have noted that Ms. Haley, our secretary, is a kind and gentle timekeeper, and she will let you know gently if your time is about to expire. So if the applicant, is it Mr. Rose or Ms. Duval here to make a presentation? I see someone speaking on my screen. Ms.
It's
Haley,
it's Monica. It's Monica
Okay.
Duvall.
all right.
Good afternoon, everyone. I have never done this. In the words of Forrest Gump, I'm a simple man. Mr. Rose, we chose over several landscapers, but I want to back up a minute. Thank you guys. Thank you, Missy. That was a beautiful presentation. How many of the board members live in North Forest Beach, exclusively North Forest Beach?
And if I could, Ms. Duval, it's a time for your presentation, not. to ask
I know, but this actually, Ms. Bryson, this actually goes into my presentation because again, I've got all of this stuff. I've been served papers by Russell Patterson. I've gotten, certified letters from Russell Patterson. This is my story and this is what I'm going to stick with it. And I'm glad I got to see the faces of Dr. Ponder and Mr. Christian, who has a boo-boo on his hand. We have been coming to North Forest Beach, my husband, for over 40 years. My husband and I have been coming for 27 years. We have raised our two boys on Egret Street, which we were blessed and fortunate to buy 12 Egret in 2011. Apparently it was a doctor's office way back in the day. It's a 1950 circa house and my husband's mom and dad redid it. We were fortunate enough the next year, 2012, to buy 12 Dove Street where we currently, 9 Dove Street where we currently live, 1,200 square feet. The family that built it were very active in the community and they passed away and we bought it in 2012 from their sons. We then went on to buy, and again, this is all going to come to a point, and that's why I said, in the words of Forrest Gump, I'm simple. This variance and codes, and I have a degree, but it's in animal science, so I can take a dog's temperature rectally. That's about the best I can do. My husband's a veterinarian. Anyway, that gets off the chain. So in 2019, we bought 21 Dove as a VRBO. It's 1965 circa. And then in 2020, and I moved down from Middle Tennessee. My husband, we sold our practice. I worked with my husband for 27 years building a business, and we have always come to the island. Josh was offered a veterinary position back in 2000, and we declined it because we didn't think that we could have afforded to have lived here at that time with our 2 children and raised them. We have no family here, of course, but anyway, so we bought the existing VRBO. That was what my husband was sending me down here to manage, and I have been very blessed and thankful. We've done some work on it. And then in 2020, we came across 14 Ibis, and it was built by Billy Miles. The reason I was asking, ma'am, how many people properly live in North Forest is it does have a very pertinent part to all of this. And that's that we chose here. We chose North Forest Beach because we love the energy and the vibe and the community and the fact that the people that have chosen to live here have a little bit of a difference that they can make rather than being so conformed with, the guidelines. So when we bought 14 Ibis in 2020 last year, we bought it from the owner, Mr. Miles, who built the home and lived and let friends and family use the property. When he passed away, he had no children or wife or so forth. So the estate went to family. The family didn't want to list it with a realtor. They wanted to list it on their own because they did not want the property to be torn down. They wanted it to be preserved. So we, on the request of our attorney and our CPA, we had to come up with an LLC, which people have gotten it wrong. It is not hip hop. It is Hip Home Investments at North Forest Beach. So it's HHI at NFB. We strategically planned and meticulously, just like we built our business from ground up, we went into the property, 14 Ibis, and we put blood, sweat, and tears. I am not a contractor, an overseer. I'm not a variance person, but we do like to think of ourselves as being law abiding. The speed limit on the freeway is 70. I go more than 70, but I have tried my very best with our pool people, with Kevin Camp. I got into some situations with that wasn't intentional, but because I feel like a lot of times within the association of North Forest, that sometimes the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is saying. And I've kind of found all of this out just by piecing it together myself. We had David Bachman, who's been on the island for many years and does contracting work. He is our neighbor right here on Dove Street. He was our general contractor. John Corwin was the electrician, and then Brian Rose and we didn't interview David because he's our neighbor, and Sylvia, but I legitimately interviewed pool people, legitimately interviewed landscaping people. We wanted to honor Mr. Billy Miles. We wanted to honor North Forest Beach with keeping, along with the incoming new properties, lovely properties that are being built. We wanted, and we still feel very convicted that the property is still a very viable and useful piece of property for VRBOs. That's what we currently are doing now in our kind of second stage of our life of, having kids out of the house. And I know that this is more than these board members need to know, but this is what I have shared with Missy. This is what we're passionate about North Forest Beach and about Forest Beach in general. I would never do anything that was not with good integrity. I'm a trash picker up. We need more trash cans along the lines of North Forest Beach for people to not throw trash around. I'm going to look through my notes, and if I'm running a little over, we had somebody cancel somebody else, so just bear with me here. When Missy, and again, Missy has been wonderful at listening to my craziness, because I am probably legitimately crazy. When she talked about the visual harmony in North Forest Beach, I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus because I just don't like doing that. But if we want to talk about visual harmony in North Forest Beach, I don't know, visual harmony in my beautiful, the fence that we're trying to create, which it's not the whole length of the property. It is a section because we consciously decided to save a house from being torn down. Everybody talks about not being Myrtle Beach. Well, if we don't want to be Myrtle Beach, we need to keep some original, especially of this part of the island. This part of the island, we laugh. It's Greenwich Village. We're a bunch of damn hippies out here, bohemians. But most of us are educated and professional and have lived here or owned property here for a very, very long time. We're people that are for the community and we're for our tourist business. And as we know, we don't have tourists, we're nothing. And so visual harmony, I spent more money than what I probably have. In fact, right now we're currently robbing from Peter to give to Paul to finish this project. We have listed it, which nobody needs to know that. But let me see here. We did everything. You have to pour porous concrete. We complied with the 6 foot. I understand, Missy told me as recently as this morning that had we been able to back that little portion of the 12-foot section up 8 to 10 feet back, well, we wouldn't have been able to have had a pool. We wouldn't have been able to have the very nice yard that we've been able to create on that 0.18 acre property that most of those are. We added, of course, the saltwater pool. Everything in the inside is completely redone and the landscaping is flawless. I'm 56 years old. I've never had sod or an irrigation system that I'm very proud of. The fence is beautiful. And if we wanted visual harmony in North Forest Beach, I would think that we would be a little more picky, or maybe a little, and again, I'm not throwing anybody under the bus. I don't have it all figured out here, but I would think if we were trying to create visual harmony, we would do a lot better job of having just a more fluid look and not, this, that, here, there, yonder, whatever. And so all we wanted to do, speaking with the gentleman that owns the house behind us, that the buffer wall is going to, or fence is going to cover, they're delightful. They're from Pittsburgh. We asked him before that fence ever went up. And my posts, Mr. Christian, are up because why in the world would we have not built up thinking that we were going to be able to continue this? I mean, because I had to have a fence for protection purposes or whatever between the houses, starting it as a rental in June. And so anyway, we went ahead and put the post up. I am very, very sorry that they're in violation. I don't want to be in violation. This is breaking my heart. It's been like nothing I've ever understood. Of course, it's out of my lane of work and just knowing, but we wanted to simply create, because there's still windows in that picture that Missy took, that profile. It's not like we were trying to hide that house or that we were trying to cover all the windows on that side of that property that's next door, that's 42 North Forest Beach. We were simply trying in the one small section to just be able to have a little privacy, and plain and simple for people that are in the beautiful on the ground saltwater pool. That's all. It's simple. It shouldn't be this difficult. I'm sorry that it has taken so much, I think, exhausted time and effort on everybody's part when there's so many other things that are more pressing, in my opinion, that involve our community. My representative, Brian Rose, spent 2 weeks at our regional hospital here, which I love our hospital. Anybody can differ with me, but he spent 2 weeks and then had to go back for a collapsed lung. That's why he has not been able to continue representing me. He would have done a much better job, but I'm going to finish this out. I do have 2 friends with me that have been coming well, they've owned property probably for over 50 years. They currently have a place on Sandpiper. They're both professionals. They've been gracious enough to help me kind of piece all this together. My husband gave this to me as a project, and I'm trying not to worry the snot out of him. He's actually in Middleton, back in Nashville, taking care of stuff back there. We've been going back and forth for 2 years with me being here managing the property. I speak to all of our guests as they come in and out of both of our VRBOs. I speak to them because the guests, because I try to also keep in mind, have them bear in mind that we have long-term residents that live on these two streets that have mostly VRBOs. Saying that, the reason I'm saying that, is simply because, again, I'm trying to let the board know that we have tried to do everything to beautify this property, to preserve this property, and to just pay homage to the community that I believe started however many years ago. So I'd love you to ask questions. I am a question girl, and I will try my very, very bestest. I will do whatever, but I am an emotional person. My husband said maybe if I just talked enough, y'all would finally just say, okay, Monica, let's just build the fence, so that I would shut up. But okay, I'm done.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. At this time, I'll go through a rotational order of board members to ask questions. Dr. Ponder, you get to go first.
Madam Chairman, I have no questions.
Oh, Dr.
Thank you.
Ponder, really?
Ms. Loudermilk, any questions from you?
I do not either.
Oh, none?
None.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Walczak, any questions from you?
Yes. My question is, I saw the pictures, and it seems to me the reason for the fence is to prevent people from looking from their balconies down at the pool. Is that correct?
No, ma'am. No, sir. No, sir. No, sir. It's not. If you will go back, if it needs to be put up, it's really more of a buffer, just because these large houses are lovely, but the side of them sometimes are not that lovely. I choose to think that this little buffer fence that's 12 feet tall, it's beautiful. Like, I have fence envy. I want a fence. I bought my house 9 Dove, and I have a chain link fence that's going to come down one day because it's unsightly, but it was here. It's not obscuring the balcony at the front of the house. It is, and it's not even covering up all of the windows at the 3-story level. There's that picture that Missy did a beautiful job of the rendering, and it shows you that it doesn't even go the whole length of my property line.
Okay, so if it's not for that purpose, it's basically for the people using your property to have a visual barrier of what you would consider maybe not as an aesthetic view. Is that it?
Yes, and I think.
All right, then why not, instead of a fence, why not put some high shrubbery in that area? Not that I'm not a landscape person at all, but I know that there are tall, thin bushes, trees, poplars, whatever you want, whatever type of material there, instead of a fence. And then that I think is acceptable. No?
Okay, and your name is, excuse me one more time, Mr.
Charlie Walczak, yes.
Walczak?
Yes.
Okay, I feel like I'm going to be really excited about this answer. Thank you for that great question. This is the thing. We did put some very slender trees on the ocean side of this fence. We put my landscaper. He's a legit landscaper. Like, he has a degree in landscape design. He's not just one of these that just goes out there and buys the truck and the rig. I mean, he's the real deal. He's a great, great man, and I'm so thankful that he has survived COVID. However, had we put anything that would have significantly grown that high, the mess involved in yard.
What would be deciduous trees you would use, not evergreen?
It could have been an evergreen, but to have gotten the same effect. Listen, I love a tree. I've sent my kids to California. They're tree huggers. I'm a tree hugger. I love some trees. We did some trees, but it was not going to make sense with the growth that potentially could have come from a shrub tree to have grown that big. My mom, she's 104, she lives in Knoxville. She did the same thing with these spruce trees to create a barrier, and they grow huge and big and round, and it's an encroachment really on both properties having something like that, because there's not a large thoroughfare through there. And had that been able to have been done, I think we would have addressed that, because again, I'm a pretty thorough, detailed person. I started a veterinary business and sold it to a corporation, and I'd like to think my gift is detail. And again, every detail has been put in to the preservation of this home in accordance to the guidelines we felt like we were needing to follow.
So did you in fact research that or not?
The fence?
The idea of putting shrubbery in, did you actually
Yes, sir.
research it?
Yes, sir. Brian Rose. Yes, sir. The renderings that Brian Rose does, Rose Landscaping, I could frame them. They're frameable. They cost $2,000, the renderings. And we went back and forth. In fact, we were going to do a fence that included wire, like a wire that went through to give it some variance. And when we played with it and we did that, we went back to the drawing board and we were like, no, that's not appealing. That doesn't look good. Okay, here's another situation Missy brought out. So from our 6-foot fence that is on it's 4 foot, that's on North Forest Beach that runs up the side of our property near the road, parallel with the road. That is basically our property. We went ahead and decided to sod it, irrigate it, and landscape it to where it's a beautiful, again, just kind of a completion of the project. And so we literally did research and look into options to be able to, and I'll be honest with you, and I spoke with Missy again at length about this on Jacana. There is a home that has a barrier wall exactly, and that's where my inspiration came from. It is a 1-level house. It's roadside. It's I forget the address of it. But anyway, you can't miss it. It's on the corner of Jacana and North Forest Beach. But the people that purchased the house did what we did. They took an original house. They made it beautiful. It's a beautiful rehab. And they added a pool and they put this 12-foot, it's not the whole length of the property. It's just a section that created a barrier between the people that lived behind. Well, those people have actually they sold the house and they've torn it down, and it's going to be 2 houses now. Missy told me this morning that the difference, she investigated it. I've tried to reach the owners to find out myself and to speak to them and haven't been able to. But Missy said what she found out was they were able to do that, because they had more space in which to do that. Because my understanding is if we would have come in 8 to 10 more feet inwards to our house, the physical yard, that we could have done this. This might not have been an issue, because apparently that's what the case is for Jacana. But Jacana has a beautiful, lovely buffer fence. I call it like a outdoor movie theater fence, because it's just buffering. It's not unsightly. It's not unbeautiful. So yes, Missy explained to me that they had more of a leadway. Again, I'm a simple person. All of this encroachment and setback and buffers and variances, I have really tried to research it.
All right, we got it. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for your answers.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Mr. Christian, it's your turn. If you have any questions.
Thank you. Can you tell the board why you didn't go through your local association's ARB?
Do you want me to be honest?
I always want folks to be honest.
Okay, I've been coming here for 27 years. I've raised the boys, our boys on egret, as I said. In my personal opinion, I don't know where I've got them right here. Let me find them. I have got 3. Oh, here they are. With my husband's parents, we actually pay taxes on 4 properties in North Forest Beach, and they all look really nice, and they're all originals. I always get these, which are the Forest Beach Owners Association Incorporated. Before I moved down here full time, I would send in my $100. At that time, we only had, 2 houses or whatever. But I was like, $100, we're just going to send it because we're good people. We're just going to go with it. Whatever. So this year I've got 3. This is my real answer. And I don't mean to disrespect anyone. I promise you I don't. I think back in the day when things got arranged in North or Forest Beach Association, they didn't do it like the other associations. And I think that's already been stated on this Zoom meeting. I'm not a political person. I just try to love, and I may not like you, but I try to love. And the whole thing is I don't think it's a very well oiled association. And I don't think that anybody was trying to do anything underhanded. Again, I am a business. My husband and I are business owners, and we didn't go to business school. We sold our business to a corporation that wanted us. We try to do right. We try to do right by people. But my honest answer to that is I don't think, Mr. Christian, that I don't think it's understood by a lot of people. Now, I think these people that come in and build these great big 3-story properties, I think that potentially is, am I saying this right? I think that, I guess to them it's understood, but we took something that was already existing and tried to preserve it. And we tried to keep the imprint so that we could have visual, not only visual, but that we could just have harmony within the community. And we see a need still for these smaller houses. It's a 5-bedroom, 3-bath home. It accommodates 14 people. I planned it meticulously. There are people that still, like us, that want to come down here to our island, but they don't want or have a need to rent a 3-story home that has 7 bedrooms and that, accommodates 22 people. They want something.
Mr. Dahl, let me, you've answered my question. I have another one. There are 4 criteria that the board needs to consider for a variance. And I was surprised during your talk with us that you didn't address any of those criteria, because legally we can only grant a variance if you show us and demonstrate to us that you have met the burden of those 4 criteria. And I did not see that in your presentation, and was wondering why you didn't address that. I understand, that your concept, but South Forest Beach does have a homeowners association, and you have an obligation to go through their procedures, whether you agree with them or not. And the town has their LMO, and they have a criteria for a variance. And this is what we legally have to do. When we approve a variance, we have to cite that it meets each one of these criteria. And that burden is on you to demonstrate to us that you have met that burden.
Well, as I stated in the very beginning, I'm simple, Mr. Christian. And no, the variances, I've gone back over them. I've tried to understand them. I've tried to look at them. Like I said, I've tried to keep my husband out of this because this was supposed to be my big girl project. And quite frankly, I think that it's a little silly because I think that there are a lot of properties that don't follow a lot of variances. I think that, I don't know. I don't know. I don't have, so yeah, I know you guys, it looks like it's going to be a no-go for the fence. And, yeah, it sounds like, maybe I need an attorney. I don't really want to do that because I will tell you, our oldest son is finishing up his final semester with no scholarships because he's gone 4.5 years to finish up a double major at Pepperdine University. And yeah, we're having to freaking rob Peter to give Paul. I don't know if I can hire an attorney to go and do this. And quite frankly, my friends that are here representing that are also good people, they lost their puppy dog yesterday. He had to be put to sleep. And I just really right now today, because I like puppy dogs and cats and pigs and everything else better than I do people, because to me, this just sounds like a bunch of mumbo jumbo. And if we want to go up and down the streets and we want to talk about grandfathered and not grandfathered and visual harmony and all of this stuff, then let's go in my golf cart and let's do that, because I don't understand. That's the reason why other associations on this island have done so well, because they have stuck to their guns on it. I mean, Lord, you talk to people over here in North Forest Beach and they're like, yeah, we chose to move here because over at the gated communities, you can't hardly toot without somebody, fining you. And so, it's kind of like living in the country and getting to do what you want, or living in the city and having to go by all these things. And so, no, sir, I am sorry, Mr. Christian. I've probably wasted all of y'all's time and I'm very sorry. And I just want it to be stated again that I don't know, I'm going to try not to be salty about this, and I'm going to try to send my money in because I don't really know what it does. I don't know what the $100 does, but I know that we paid a lot of property tax on these 3 houses that keep things going and that keep people employed, such as a yard person and, so anyway.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
All right.
I've
thank
got
you,
my
sir.
good, yeah. Okay.
Mr. Fingerhut, do you have any questions?
Actually, just one. Ms. Duval, if you could succinctly explain what exactly is the hardship to you by following the law and having only a 7-foot fence? How are you harmed by following the law as it is?
I just came home Friday from Knoxville, seeing my 104-year-old mother, and I should have followed the law going 70 miles an hour, but I didn't. Succinctly, which I didn't know that word until recently, both my boys used it. And then I was like, well, how do you spell that? But now I get it. Thank goodness. Thank goodness I get it succinctly. What I can tell you succinctly is that, you know what? No, in the scheme of things, it's not gonna cause life or death. It's not gonna solve COVID. It's not going to make a difference of world hunger or, people being idiots in the United States, whatever. It's not going to solve anything. What I simply wanted to do was that for guests that were in that home, or if we sell it because we listed it on the market, that it would provide a little bit of privacy, And it's a lovely fence. I didn't stick something up there that was unsightly. The people, in fact, you guys received a letter from the people that live across the street from us that have lived there for Mike and Nancy. They sent you guys a letter stating, and they're both Vanderbilt graduates. So again, people that, have more.
Ms. Duval, I'm sorry not to cut you off, but we've read the record, but I'm being very specific. So the hardship to you, since you don't live in the house, is what? What is the hardship to you?
The hardship is that I think it looks better with having, I think it looks all put together, and I think it's a lovely statement. The entire, what we have tried to create, I think is lovely if you have taste, or if you know, I think it puts the package together. And we did do our due diligence by asking our neighbors. And I, as I said, I might not be a lot of things, but I'm a very, very conscious, considerate person that chooses love. And so no, succinctly, I don't probably am giving you a very good answer because it's not causing a hardship. My husband and I did think about moving over there because it is slim for VRBO rentals in the off season, because it's just gone on the market of being a VRBO. So my husband and I got a little bit crazy. So we were like, okay, we're going to move over there. Well, come to find out, some of our neighbors that rented a house here long-term for 2.5 years on Dove Street, the gentleman sold the house out from underneath them, and they're in their late 60s, and they need a place to go. So we actually are going to rent the house to them starting in November, December, January, so that they have a place. They hail from Pittsburgh, but they have a daughter and grandkids on the island that they like to be near, to be, to help with raising the grandkids and stuff. And so we were going to move over there and let them have 9 Dove, which is 1,500 square feet, 14 Ibis is 2,500 square feet. And my husband's bringing back 2 cats. He's a veterinarian. And so we've got 3 dogs. We rescue, we've got, yeah. And so I was like, I don't want these kitty cats to go over there and be unorderly and spray, if you know anything about cats. And so I was like, let's just keep our mess right here in 9 Dove, and let's keep that fresh and let these people. So we're trying to help people. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah. So that probably doesn't answer what you want.
Nope, that's okay. That's your answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, to the chair, and I have no questions. So the next item in this procedure is any staff rebuttal. Ms. Lewick, any staff rebuttal?
I believe Ms. Dixon was going to clarify a prior question.
Thanks, Missy. I was just gonna, the question, Ms. Bryson, that you had at the beginning of meeting about the ARB, we quickly reviewed while this hearing was taking place, quickly reviewed the LMO, the rules of procedure, and state code related to variances, and we do not find that there's any direction provided related to any local ARB action. I think going forward, we'll strongly recommend that applicants demonstrate that they've either received approval or denial from an ARB, but there's nothing in the LMO that requires that take place at this point. And I think Missy reached out to the ARB while we're on this call as well. And Missy, do you want to go ahead and update the board?
Sure. The John Snodgrass with Forest Beach Association said that there's no order of which one comes first, the ARB approval or a variance. Of course, they would prefer that it goes through the ARB prior to the variance. But I guess similarly, we've had other cases in Forest Beach specifically. If you remember, there was the home with the cement wall that was blocking its access. So I guess we could go either way. And as Nicole has previously stated, perhaps going forward, we could try to seek the ARB approval prior to the variance going through the variance process. But it's not currently a requirement.
Thank you. Did you check to see if there was any time constraints on when someone makes an application for a variance and when that must be heard, whether or not it's gone before an ARB or whatever the review board is called in the association?
Well, when somebody applies for a variance with the town, then we put it on the next available agenda. So our process starts rather quickly. If they needed to seek ARB approval and if it is within an ARB and we need to do that, then the lead time for them, they would have to have that in the application submittal before we receive it. So that would just be a shift in our application process. Certainly we wouldn't issue the building permit for the taller fence until we have ARB approval, which the variance approval is just for if they can do it or not. And then there's subsequent additional permits that are needed in this case.
Okay. Well, let's set aside board discussion on that process until we come down to board business. But with regard to this application, it was not done is I think the answer. Is that correct? That with regard to this application, that there was no deferral to the ARB before the variance was scheduled before the board.
No.
Are you,
Okay.
Right.
All right.
No,
Thank you.
there was not ARB approval for the fence. In fact, the letter that was received from the ARB, the approvals that were granted to this property were not for a fence.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else on staff rebuttal? Ms. Duvall, you have 5 minutes for rebuttal only with regard to the points just made by Ms. Lewick, not with regard to anything else. Do you have any rebuttal as to the rebuttal of the town staff?
it just sounds like to me, my rebuttal would be, it just sounds like to me that there's a lot of stuff that's just kind of not known, is what it seems like to me, that there aren't things that are outlined exactly like maybe they needed to be. Again, I don't think my Brian Rose did anything that was against what he was supposed to be doing. I think he did everything that he thought that he knew. You know, it wasn't his first time of building a fence or doing what he does. So to me, in my opinion, my rebuttal would be that it seems like, again, the right hand is not maybe telling the left hand, and there might, it sounds like it's a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? A little bit foggy. Yeah, I don't know. That, yeah.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. And board members, I apologize. Our procedure, our outline asked me to ask you if you have any questions, and I'll try to make it simple this time, of either the town staff or Ms. Duvall during their rebuttal period. Any questions? Dr. Ponder, you're first in my list of questions for the town staff, and I'll include the applicant's rebuttal. Any questions from you?
I have no questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Loudermilk, any questions from you of either rebuttal?
I have none.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Walczak, any questions from you about either rebuttal?
Yeah, just one with regard to who supersedes who with regard to the ARB or the town. I would think the town has the upper hand on this, no? In other words, if the ARB says one thing, and I don't know, is there a precedent here? Doesn't the town have ultimate say in what goes on?
Yeah, I think that's a question for our staff attorney, Ms. Bush. Ms. Bush, there you are.
Yes, ma'am. My apologies. I'm happy to answer that, but I think that perhaps we should address that when we address the other board issues rather than at this hearing.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
that's fine.
I think there's a number of things that we need to talk about after, but
Okay, if it's not that simple, okay, fine.
Okay.
thank you.
All right. Mr. Christian, any questions of you to either rebuttal?
No questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Fingerhut, any questions of you to either rebuttal?
No questions. Thank you.
And the chair has no questions. So at this time, we'll move into board discussion of the matter. And to remind the board that this is general discussion, and then we'll have a time for public comment. So any board discussion at this time? I'll go quickly through the list. Mr. Walczak, any discussions before we receive public comment? Mr. Walczak, I see your lips moving, but I can't hear you.
I hit the wrong button. Hit the
Sorry,
wrong
I
button.
understand.
No, as far as I could say, I don't know if there's too much more to say about this. I mean, it's quite evident that the town has made judgment on the 4 cases that we have to deal with. So that's really all I have to say.
Okay. Mr. Christian, any discussion before we receive public comment?
I agreed with Mr. Walczak that there's probably a landscaping solution that could be explored, as well as some other solutions that it could be explored. And I know we're going to talk about this later, but I was disappointed not to see an ARB weighing in either pro or con on the issue. I was disappointed that I understand, Mrs. Duvall, that this is a very complicated process, and it's complicated for a reason, but we have to, adhere to a set of criteria and the law. And I'm sorry that you didn't make a better case based on that criteria.
Mr. Fingerhut, any discussion from you at this time?
I think the only comment, and I guess we're going to pick up on this later, but historically, it's been my understanding that the town, and that includes us, does not enforce covenants. There is a mechanism to do that by the HOAs that have them, and by the properties that are subject to them. But it's not something that we necessarily have to consider or respect in our decisions. We have to follow the law and follow the LMO. As Missy has pointed out, getting the variance doesn't get you a permit to build anything. There are other requirements to get a permit to build something. Anyway, we're going to discuss that later, but I just did want to say that it's I'm not a South Carolina attorney, but this has been the position that's been explained to me for many years, that we don't enforce the private covenants. So
Yes. Okay. Dr. Ponder, any discussion from you before we go to public comment?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And the chair has none. Ms. Haley, are there any public comments? Any folks wanting to comment on this application? I know we did receive documents in our record, including documents from the ARB, from the Forest Beach Owners Association. So anyone from the public wishing to speak during this public hearing?
Madam Chair, this is Tracy. There are no callers regarding this.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. At this time, then I'll incorporate all of the.
Oh,
I'm sorry, somebody's trying to speak.
yes. I actually do have somebody that wants to speak in the public forum.
Okay.
Can we do that, please?
Any objections from board members for Ms. Duvall having someone speak during the public comment period? Hearing none, go ahead, Ms. Duvall. You have someone there with you who wants to speak.
Hi, this is Melissa Sellers, and we've owned property, 2 different houses here in North Forest Beach for years. I just have 2 quick things I'd like to say. Apparently, someone approved the Jacana North Forest Beach fence. And I thought once something like that was done, that sets a precedence and it allows for others to follow suit, if you will, on the actual height of a fence, or, that somebody on Jacana can't put up a higher one, but somebody on Ibis cannot. But anyway, I'm not sure how that all happened, but if indeed, maybe it was just one variance and they got an okay. I'm not sure, but actually this fence is no different in that it is a side fence from a property, and it runs sideways to North Forest. It's not running along the length of North Forest. So it really is not a deterrent for anybody on North Forest looking sideways at a fence. The other thing is, I do think that there are a lot of things in the neighborhood and on the island everywhere that kind of get through the seams that are much bigger than this. The example I have are the beach walkways in North Forest from the homeowners, oceanfront homeowners that have been allowed to put up obstructive. To me, it's the equivalent of a cattle fence from their home to the beach, and it obscures the view of the dunes as other homeowners are coming over. And this is nowhere near that offensive, if you will, to anyone, as everybody walks toward the ocean. That's the whole goal. And those are up, and in my view, it's no comparison. But anyway, I think Monica and Josh have done a wonderful job in preserving an older home in the area versus a eight bedroom McMansion. And I think, there's certainly nothing offensive about that piece of fencing that would be constructed. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
All righty. So this time I'll incorporate all of the evidence before the board, including the written application and the submittals of others with regard to this hearing and the testimony today. Any objection to incorporating the reports, documents, and testimony into the record? Hearing none, at this time I will close the public hearing. I'm sorry, Ms. Haley, I should have asked you, did you get the name of the person who made the public comment?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Now we will have a final board discussion on this request. And then after the discussion, I will ask for a motion on the matter. But this time we'll go to board discussion. And Mr. Christian, you get to lead off this discussion.
I just have a comment, Madam Chairperson. I think there are other venues that could be explored to provide the outcome that the applicant wishes. And I don't believe the applicant has met her burden at this time of each of the criteria to offer this variance.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Fingerhut, your turn next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, I would echo Mr. Christian's comments, just with, I guess, one clarifier. I don't think the applicant has met any of the conditions that have to be demonstrated in order to show you're entitled to a variance. It appears there are other options that may be helpful, but this is one of those rare situations where all four pieces of the test have not been demonstrated. I mean, there's really nothing we could do, even if we wanted to, within the law.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Dr. Ponder, you're next in the list.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have to agree with Mr. Fingerhut. I think this is one of those regrettable cases where no matter intentions, I think there's sometimes a lack of understanding that we have constraints within which we have to work, and that we cannot decide cases based on how we feel or what we think or, anything like that. There are standard criteria which must be met, and none of those criteria in this case, quite regrettably, none has been met. So I think we just have no leg to stand on. There's just no choice in how we vote.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Loudermilk, it's to you.
I guess I'm a person of few words today, but my constituents have frankly expressed my opinion very clearly. We can't use our own opinions or preferences in order to decide on a variance. The criteria that we are provided with and are required to follow, the criteria just have not been met.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Waldsack.
A lot has been said, and I think we're all in agreement. I agree with my colleagues.
Thank you, sir. And the chair going last again. I agree with my colleagues as well that the applicant has not shown compliance with any of the 4 required criteria. And I believe in the staff's report included the language that is not in keeping with the neighborhood, and I certainly agree with that. So at this time, I'll ask for a motion on the variance request.
Madam Chair, I would move that the application be disapproved based on the findings of fact and conclusions of law in the staff determination.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second
I'll
that.
second that.
Second by Mr. Alzak. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, Ms. Haley, will you call the roll on the motion?
Certainly. Mr. Christian,
For the motion.
Mr. Walzak,
For the motion.
Ms. Loudermilk,
For the motion.
Dr. Ponder,
For the motion.
Mr. Fingerhut,
For the motion.
Ms. Bryson.
For the motion.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you all. Thank you, Ms. Duvall, and your neighbor for the comments. We will move on to our next item of business. Ms. Duvall, you're welcome to stay on with us, but if you want to leave the meeting, you're also welcome to do that at this time. The next item on the agenda, as indicated, is the withdrawal of a variance application for 161 Dillon Road, and we'll move on to board business.
Thank you unmuted me, and then somebody took my picture off so they couldn't see my face. Thank you guys for your time. Thank you for being so legally accurate, and yeah, right on, Manic Monday. Enjoy the rest of it. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks.
So on to board business, the discussion of LMO amendments related to lot sizes and setbacks. And the chair continued to have this on our agenda. The last notes were that staff was going to do some education work in this area. And I think it would be good if we have an update from staff with regarding to this matter, which has the concern of the board. Is there somebody from staff who is going to give us a report on the status?
Sure, Nicole Dixon for the record. Thank you, Madam Chair. Staff is, and I'll combine this update with the LMO amendment update that's further down on the agenda.
That'll be fine.
Okay, thanks. Staff is continuing to do research on potential amendments, and we will be engaging with our consultant in the near future to begin drafting amendments, with the first priority being the short-term rental ordinance.
Okay, and you indicate there's a consultant?
There is a consultant that will be assisting town with research and drafting of LMO amendments.
Okay, and in that list, will there be consideration of lot sizes and setbacks?
Yes, ma'am, that is on our list.
Okay, all right. So board members will go through the list again to see if you have comments or questions on that report on both item A, LMO amendments to lot sizes and setbacks, and LMO amendments the board had specifically requested, which is under staff reports. So Dr. Ponder, any questions of Ms. Dixon or other staff members?
I have no questions. I thank staff for their great work.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Ms. Loudermilk, any questions from you?
I have none. Thank you.
I should say, or comments. So, Mr. Walczak, any questions or comments from you?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Fingerhut, questions or comments from you?
Nope,
Mr.
none, thank you,
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Christian, questions or comments from you?
And Nicole, do these amendments have any bearing on the town's work regarding limiting short-term rentals at this point?
I'm not sure what's gonna come out of the amendments or proposed short-term rental ordinance. Staff has done research on what other communities have done and adopted, and looking at some of the problems that we've seen taking place on the island. And I know that our consultant is beginning to do some research as well, get involved with stakeholders and find out some of the problems or concerns that's being seen around the island. And then the next step would be to draft amendments.
Okay, is the issue of the lot size, because the lot sizes are smaller, it's more density and therefore the potential for more short-term rentals, or is it just the lot size is an issue, putting too much house on so little of a piece of property?
I'm not sure that that's the issue. I think, honestly, I can't answer that. I'm not sure the list of problems and what the consultant is looking at tackling. I believe it's more of the residential areas where short-term rentals are currently occurring, and the nuisance that those short-term uses are imposing on the neighborhood.
Madam Chair, this was obviously under discussion before I became a member of the BZA. Can you give me a real cheap nickel overview of why we're talking about this particular issue?
Yes, sir, I'll do my best. Yeah, the board was concerned because we had a number of variances requested for encroachments into setback and buffers with really small lots where the structures had been built totally out to the building footprint. And should there be some consideration of what to do about that? And the staff had said education, and now I think we're hearing that perhaps consideration of amendments to the LMO so that we won't be faced with the extensive building footprint on small lots and requests for variances, even though that's our job, but that's in a nutshell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That clarifies things.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, I got confused with combining the LMO amendment topic, and what our consultants would first be working on would be the short-term rental ordinance. So I didn't mean to confuse you. I apologize.
That's fine, Nicole. You got a lot on your plate. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. And one other point with regard to short-term rentals, I noticed that the town council's public planning committee has a special meeting for tomorrow, scheduled for tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. And amongst their unfinished business is a staff update and presentation of the current status of the short-term rental ordinance.
That's what prompted my question, Madam Chair.
We're trying to pay attention. Good work. Good work. Okay, so with that, we'll go to under board business, the review and adoption of the 2022 meeting schedule. You have that meeting schedule in your board package. Unless there's any questions about that schedule, it would be appropriate for the chair to ask for a motion to approve that schedule.
May I ask a question, Madam Chair? The November 28th meeting, is that Thanksgiving week or after Thanksgiving?
I would ask the staff, because I think they looked at the schedule. Ms. Lewick, Ms. Haley, can someone help us about that? I haven't looked at 2022 for Thanksgiving. I can look. Usually the staff considers Thanksgiving week, so I'm wondering if it is the next week.
Madam Chair, this is Teresa.
Yes, ma'am.
The 28th is after the Monday after the Thanksgiving holiday.
Perfect.
Okay, all right. And I guess in like manner, the April week is not the week of the Heritage Tournament. I think it's after the Heritage Tournament.
That's correct.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions or comments about the 2022 meeting schedule?
Move acceptance, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Haley, will you call the roll?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Christian,
For the motion.
Mr. Walzak,
For the motion.
Ms. Loudermilk,
For the motion.
Dr. Ponder,
For the motion.
Mr. Fingerhut,
For the motion.
Ms. Bryson.
For the motion.
Motion carries unanimously.
And we'll all note those dates on our calendars, I'm sure. Now we come to staff reports. And the first one is status of appeals to circuit court. And Mr. Christian, I think we had one of these since you joined the board, but we're trying to keep up with where things are once they leave our purview, so that we can keep aware of them. And we specifically ask if there's anything that's noted either in the pleadings or as a result of any decision at a court level that affects the way we do our business, either through our procedures or the way we consider substantive matters. So, Ms. Bush, you're up. I'm sorry.
I hate to interrupt, but I have another meeting that I have to attend.
Okay. All right.
Thank you so much.
Ma'am.
Bye, everybody.
See you later.
Bye-bye, doctor.
Okay, now we're back to Ms. Bush. Report on the status of appeals to circuit court from BZA decisions.
Madam Chair, I have checked both the status of our cases through the public index for Beaufort County 14th Circuit, as well as monitored any direct mailings to the town, and the status is exactly the same.
Questions from board members of Ms. Bush? Ms. Loudermilk?
No, thank you.
Mr. Walczak?
None, thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Fingerhut?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Christian?
No questions, Madam Chair.
Okay. And the chair does have a question that we had asked before about particularly the Sandcastle cases. Do you have a copy of any pleadings in that challenging the board's decision to tell us what's the nature of the challenges?
I have not looked for those, so I don't have them with me. If that's something the board directs me to uncover, then I'm happy to do that. If you asked me that previously, I apologize. I didn't catch it.
Okay, I think it'd be helpful to know. I think last report was status was the request for mediation, and there had not been a filing, but surely the time has run to have such a filing by now. Okay. The next item is status of amendments to the BZA rules of procedure. Ms. Lewick and Ms. Bush, I think y'all are both working on that. So whoever wants to give us a status.
Sure. The final, some of the staff proposed edits as a result of the discussion we had several months back has been prepared and is currently sitting on Ms. Bush's desk for review. So as soon as it gets to the top of her stack, she will be looking at that. I anticipate that this will be on your agenda next month for your first look at those edits.
Both of those statements from Missy are in fact true. I do want to add, though, that a number of different boards are undergoing review of their rules and procedures as well, and we are trying to look at it in a holistic way, so that and as well we've got issues or amendments being worked on that will be brought forward with regard to procedure for town council and actually for all the boards, that there are some changes on the horizon. They're going to include things such as decorum with an eye towards remote meetings, in-person meetings, time limits, just things that are more step-by-step in terms of being able to run the meetings efficiently. So once those started to roll, which happened late August, I realized that we had to incorporate everybody and make everything consistent. So that has a lot to do with the lag on this, besides the other things piled on my desk. So.
Okay, all right. Questions from board members? Ms. Loudermilk?
No.
Mr. Walczak?
No questions.
Mr. Fingerhut?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Christian?
No questions.
And Dr. Ponder has had to leave. The chair does have one question. I appreciate that I guess, if you will, our request has gotten now integrated with the request of others, other boards, and also perhaps some amendments town council may want to consider. But I might ask a specific request. We had a lot of trouble with the, I think it's now called a motion for reconsideration. And we thought that a simple change to make that a motion for rehearing would clear up a lot of that. Could we at least move forward with that one change for our November meeting? And then we'll circle back and do a more holistic view later.
I don't see a problem with that. I think we're ready on that. A number of other things that will maybe change some of the dynamics. For example, swearing witnesses in. That's from my vantage, something that absolutely has to be done, and to distinguish witnesses from public comment. I think that's an important thing for us to consider. But yes, ma'am, however you wish to proceed, we'll certainly get things ready. As Missy said, I see this coming forward in October, at least with a more detailed outline. And Missy, if I'm off here, jump in.
I mean, the outline that we have already identified, is on your desk. All of the new items that you just discussed are not on your desk right now, but it sounds like they're in the works. So it may be step one are all of the items that the BZA has previously discussed that we explored, that amendment. And then as those other unifying elements to all of the rules for all the boards is completed, then maybe we have a phase 2 of a rule amendment.
Fair enough.
I think that'd be good. Any objections or other comments, board members, that about that suggested procedure to move those key items up outside of that large stack? I'm seeing nothing, hearing nothing. I would ask the staff to proceed.
Patsy, what exactly are we talking about? What 3 items?
Yes, sir. Our rules of procedure now call for something called a motion for reconsideration, and the standard was very confusing. Most folks are more familiar with the motion for rehearing, which is when there's new evidence that could not have come before the board before. So we've asked to change that, and that is indeed the type of rule that the Municipal Association of South Carolina has in their model rules, and a lot of other jurisdictions use as well. The swearing in of witnesses and separating that from public comment is something that we had, maybe Ms. Bush and I had discussed before. And so that would be a change. Right now, we don't swear in witnesses, but that is a common practice before quasi-judicial boards. And then help me, what was the third one?
There were a number of small items of changing the term chairman to just chair. And there were some items additionally related to the petition for rehearing, or what was reconsideration, and changing the time limit for that. Right now, it's a really quick turnaround to get that petition in. So there were just some details related to those items.
Those items, yes. Okay. Thank you. Does that help out, Mr. Christian?
Yes, it does.
All righty. Well, let's proceed that way. And if there's any issues with regard to the larger concept, let us know. But we'll proceed that way. Would expect to have phase 1 and phase 2 as you've described. So, okay, great. Then we've already had a report on the status of the LMO amendment. So that brings us to the waiver report. Ms. Lewick.
There was a waiver report that was included in the packet. Within the last 2 months, we had 4 waivers approved. Some of those are, there were multiple waiver approvals in one waiver number. So while there were 4 waiver numbers, you can see that there were, in some cases, up to 3 waivers approved with each project. So there were quite lengthy explanations of what those waivers were for. I guess if there are any questions related to that waiver report, I can certainly try to answer those.
And to make it easier, I'm not going to go down the list, but does anybody have any questions or comments with regard to the waiver report?
No.
If not, we'll include that in our record as we always do. Anything else to come before the board? Anything from board members or staff?
Other than the question I had,
Yes, sir.
Diane Bush said she was going to consider it at this time regarding the jurisdiction of the town versus the ARBs.
Right. Yes, in that process. Thank you, Mr. Walczak, for reminding us.
Well, I
Thank
have
you.
one clarifying point, and as Mr. Fingerhut pointed out, that the town usually doesn't consider the private covenants, but certainly as far as like a procedural order, the ARBs can review the project prior to the town, because the town would always ask for ARB approval before issuing any permit. But certainly a step to get a variance isn't a building permit or a final approval in any way. It's more of a preliminary approval. But certainly having the blessing of the ARB isn't a bad idea. It's just not currently a requirement for a variance.
Yeah, but Missy,
Madam Chair, I always like to hear from the local community, because they're the ones on the ground at the lowest possible level. And obviously, we don't have to agree with them. We can disagree with them. And they have their own remedy, even if the town approves it, to go to court and stop the action. But it just saves a step. If they know they're going to be disapproved by their ARB, it might make our job a little bit easier, knowing that in advance.
It would.
Okay.
Were you suggesting almost that we have a checkbox on the application form that says if you're in an area that requires an ARB approval, have you sought it, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, well, we used to at one point. We did have that box. If they didn't check it, they didn't check it. But at least it's on there, so they know that there is a process, and it may be to their advantage to go through that process, because if the ARB is for it, it probably would weigh heavily or give added impetus to their application.
Right. Well, there
I'm
is
not saying
about,
that it would sway us, but it would be a factor that we would like to consider.
right. We do have the standard box that says that, this application is not in violation of any private covenants, yes or no. And of course, on this particular case, she said no. So.
Missy, I think Diane was going to go ahead and discuss the issue, and potentially we can include this in our rules of procedure.
Exactly. That's exactly where I was going to go, is that these types of things, my opinion is they should be included in your rules, and we're at the right time to be talking about this. As far as what comes first, the chicken or the egg, and no question about it, these properties that are within POAs, the POA has the final say. It makes sense. You join a community, you're part of the POA at the end says, these are our rules. That's great that the town approved this, but it's not in compliance with our rules. So in my mind, it makes sense to me that the POA should weigh in first, because it'll just go around the corner. If we approve something, or y'all approve something, and then the applicant then runs up against a POA issue, then there's an added level of frustration for the homeowner or the applicant. And I think that if, to the degree we can help move things along, the process is slow as it is, I think it's reasonable, but from a perspective of a homeowner, that it would make sense to streamline things in this fashion. And I think you can do that through your rules.
I will add too that the LMO right now requires that we get HOA approval for design review board applications, but it's not specific for Board of Zoning Appeals applications. So down the road, we can add that to the LMO as a requirement. In the meantime, we can strongly suggest that they turn that in as part of their application, or like Diane said, we can add it to the rules of procedure so that they have to abide by that.
That's my thought on it. And back to the question, I hope I answered that, Mr. Walczak. in that the property owner association at the end of the day is going to have the say so. You've agreed to abide by their rules in exchange for living there. So.
Right, but the thing is, let's just say, take this case today. Let's say the homeowners association there said, oh yeah, 12-foot fence is terrific. It's in our ordinance. You can have that. It's okay. It's permitted. Now the owner has false hope because we don't.
Sir, and if I may, if the discussion is going to continue in a legal vein, I may suggest that we consider moving into executive session or setting another time for executive session to go into the legal aspect of this.
Oh, is that what it is? Okay.
I'm a lawyer. Everything
I'm an
I
engineer.
think is law. So
Well,
up to y'all. Just my vantage.
yeah, I think we ought to have a little more discussion before we would consider whether or not we need to go into executive session. I certainly respect that. But let's have a little more discussion first to see where we're headed and see if we need that at this meeting. Ms. Loudermilk, I'm just looking at the people across the top of my screen now. So Ms. Loudermilk, I see you. Any comments or questions from you about this topic?
I think the ARB approval or consideration is probably the most logical first step. But I think, and I'm sure staff does a very good job at doing this, I think maybe where Mr. Walczak is going, forget a particular case. The ARB approval does not trump the town LMO, is my understanding.
Right, but it does give them false hope.
We would still need to approve any LMO variance based under, again, R4 criteria, regardless of, what parameters the ARB used in their consideration.
But I moved into this house because I knew I could have a 12-foot fence.
I think that it's at the end, it's a dynamic combination. So the POAs can't fly in the face of the LMO, but on the more detail, if it makes sense, that if you consider it as though if the town is like the state, and there's certain areas that are preempted from what you can and can't do within the state, and then that the POA is similar to the town. And then so the town comes along and has its own particular rules, but it has to keep an eye on what the state says. So it's a very interactive relationship.
Actually, I would agree with that. And I would also think that it may not be wise to change our rules to require this because it gives too much weight to what the HOA does. It is on the form already. The form is going to say, are you in compliance with your homeowners association requirements? And really, and I've seen this on cases that have gone into court afterward, heaven help them if they check the wrong box. It's difficult to defend if you say you've done it and you haven't done it. So it's helpful to us to know what the HOA thinks. I agree with Mr. Christian. It's very helpful. It doesn't bind us, but it's helpful to know.
And I would, to give Mr. Walczak some comfort, in my 22 years managing community associations, I have not found a situation where the community association's criteria is more restrictive than the town's. 99% of the time, the community association will have stricter requirements than the town's LMO provides.
Yeah, but I was suggesting something that's more lenient than the town. And therefore I bought my house because I could put up the 12-foot fence, and now the town is telling me I can't. I'm just
how is that a community association issue?
Well, because the community allows it. they allow the fence, and I'm not.
I don't know a community association on Hilton Head Island that allows a 12-foot fence.
That's as an example. That's all. We're just talking hypothetical here.
I'm
not
just
that
giving
they
you a
would.
dose of reality.
Well, if they could, pick something else then, pick something else that they would allow, an elevated pool that's up at your second floor level. I mean, I don't know.
Not gonna happen.
Okay.
At least it's food for thought.
I think as far as the chair weighing in, I like to see, I joined some of the folks who say they'd like to see the requirement, unless it's prohibited by statute or by case law, that the POA, the ARB's comments come before we consider the matter. I think that in some cases, perhaps the reverse has been true, is that there's been some town approval of a request and the property owner thinks they're golden and they don't have to go get the association approval. So I think that reverse is also true. And I think the box on the application that I recall from looking at the applications that we have is about the covenants. And that's a different thing. That's a different question from, have you made a request to the ARB or whatever the review board is called within the association? And so that's a different question. And so I would recommend that, as suggested by Ms. Bush, we take a look at an amendment to our rules to require that happen. And then we can have a more full, frank discussion about whether or not we want to make that amendment. And if indeed there's any kind of legal advice we need to receive about considering that amendment, we could do it at that time during executive session. So that'd be my suggestion on how we proceed. There's a little bit of difference of opinion about how we do this and if we do this, but any objection to go ahead and taking that step and then having a more full and frank discussion?
That's fine.
That's fine.
Okay, let's make it so, as it's often said on Star Trek, Captain Picard, I think, make it so. Okay. All right. Now, did I overlook anything else that we're supposed to talk about? Or anything new anybody's thought about? Going once, going twice?
Move adjournment.
All right. Anybody objecting to adjournment? But I don't know that we have to have a formal motion, but thank you all for your
Good meeting, everybody.
always active consideration and participation, and thank you to the staff and the public. And I still see a couple of council members' names on my screen block, so thank you for your attention. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Walczak is
Just
waving
one
his
thing,
hand.
only because I seconded this motion, I have to sign the papers, so I'm gonna be out of town starting Wednesday, so if we could have the papers ready tomorrow by noontime or so, or earlier, I could then be,
Yes,
is
we'll
that
do.
okay? Late morning?
Yes.
Good.
You'll
Great.
get me.
And
Missy,
actually, the chair will be leaving town too.
Missy, do we do those signings in person or is a PDF okay?
No, in person. So you'll get an email, whoever motioned and seconded, and of course the chair signs, and then and we'll let you know which bin it's in for signature.
Okay, and then we need to come to town hall to sign it?
Right.
Okay, and we have to get sterilized before we go there and immersed in some type
Yes.
of.
Yes.
And did I hear, Ms. Loic, it'll be ready by noon tomorrow?
Yes, you'll get an email when it's ready.
And
Great.
leave your gun in the car.
Is that, well, thank you, Ms. Walczak. The chair is actually leaving.
Take care, everybody.
Okay, thank you all.
All right.
Meeting adjourned.